Islam is growing rapidly in Australia. The number of Muslims has increased 8 times in the last 35 years. Mosques continue to grow. More and more Muslims are entering the political arena too. And for the first time in the history of this country, 2 Muslims were elected as ministers in the current Australian cabinet.
Islam is developing rapidly in Australia. Dost Muhammad, a camel trader, took a deep breath as soon as the ship carrying him from Karachi, Pakistan, pulled up at Melbourne Harbour, Australia, in 1860. He stared at a new continent that was vast and had a variety of natural riches. There were 24 camels with him. The humped animals were planned to be used to accompany the Burke and Hill expedition as they explored the Australian continent through the desert. History then proves that these first explorers encountered quite big obstacles on their journey. Although Dost Muhammad survived, after the expedition ended, the man died after falling from his camel. There are 2 things worth noting about this incident. First, the Australian continent began to open to foreigners and the beginning of the era of modern civilization there. And, secondly, what is more important is the presence of the first Muslim, Dost Muhammad, in the kangaroo country. After Dost, a number of camel traders from Pakistan and Afghanistan, hereinafter referred to as the Gons, arrived, especially in the late 19th century. Camels are needed because of their ability to survive in the desert areas that dominate the Australian mainland. Next, their steps were followed by the arrival of Muslim immigrants from Albania, Yugoslavia, Turkey, Cyprus, Palestine, Lebanon, Egypt, North Africa, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. Most of them then work as laborers in mines, factories, and plantations. Some of them also work as traders. Thanks to their persistence and hard work spirit, these Muslim immigrants are considered to have contributed to development efforts in the early days of Australia. That is the history widely understood about the beginning of the arrival of Islam to Australia, which is located in the south of Indonesia archipelago. But is this true? Regina Ganter, associate professor at Griffith University, Australia, explained that sailors looking for sea cucumbers from Macassar had arrived in northern Australia around 1720 to 1750. So, long before the arrival of Muslims from Pakistan or Afghanistan. These Muslim sailors established good relations with the Aborigines, the original inhabitants of the Australian continent. Ganter strengthens his opinion with evidence that there are many traces of the culture of Macassar Muslim sailors on the Yolngu people, Aboriginals in northern Australia, including in their language, art, stories, and cuisine. Anthropologist John Bradley from Monash University also supports this opinion. According to him, contact between the 2 groups is very beneficial for both parties. They trade together, regardless of racial differences. That's very fair, he said. Even into the early 21st century, the shared history between these 2 peoples is still celebrated by Aboriginal communities in northern Australia, as a symbol of mutual trust and respect. The end of World War II was an important moment for the existence of the Australian Muslim community. Between 1945 to 1988, there was an increase in the number of Muslim immigrants arriving in the country, especially from Turkey, Indonesia, Lebanon, Egypt, and Malaysia. Muslim immigrants also came from Bosnia and Albania. Until now, the Muslim population continues to grow and has even become the largest minority. Based on the 1986 census, the number of Muslims in Australia was around 109,523 people. However, according to the 2021 census, the number of Muslims has reached 813,392 people, an increase of almost 8 times in 35 years. Currently, Muslims constitute 3.2% of Australia's total population of 26 million. The majority of Australians claim to adhere to Christianity, namely around 44%. Meanwhile, 39% declared themselves to have no religion. the area of the country and continent of Australia reaches 7,692,024 square kilometers. This makes Australia the sixth largest country in the world after Russia, Canada, China, the United States and Brazil. Half the Muslim population currently lives in the state of New South Wales, whose capital is Sydney, Australia's largest city. Then around 33% are in the state of Victoria, whose capital is Melbourne. Others are spread across Western Australia, Perth, the capital Canberra, Tasmania, Hobart, and Northern Australia, Darwin. Along with this development, the activities of religious organizations in this country continue to grow. Currently, each state has a Muslim Community Council, an Islamic Cultural Center, a Muslim Student Association, and manages mosques. Meanwhile, at the national level, the Australian Muslim Community Federation has existed since 1964. This organization is the umbrella for almost all Muslim community associations in Australia. In 1974, the name of the organization was changed to the Australian Muslim Council with members from around 70 Muslim organizations spread throughout Australia. The number of mosques continues to increase from time to time. One of the largest is the Imam Ali Mosque in Lake Lakemba, Sydney. Apart from that, there are other large mosques in Melbourne, Victoria, Brisbane, Queensland, Hobart, Tasmania, and other cities there. Some of these mosques were once apartment buildings, even churches, which had been purchased by the local Muslim community. Australian Muslims do not use mosques simply as a place to carry out religious rituals. Mosque imams also organize training programs and Islamic religious lessons. Teaching staff were brought in from various international Dawah institutions, such as the Regional Islamic Dawah Council for Southeast Asia and the Pacific, RIDSEP. Muslims are also increasingly entering the political arena. For the first time in Australian history, Muslims were elected as ministers. In 2022, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese appointed 2 Muslim ministers to his cabinet. They are the Minister of Youth and Early Childhood Educators, and Ali, and the Minister of Industry and Science, Ed Husic. And Azza Ali El Sarugi is a Muslim woman born in Alexandria, Egypt, who moved to Australia following her family. She holds a master's degree and a PhD from Edith Cowan University. She will be recorded as the first Muslim woman to serve as minister in the Australian cabinet. Meanwhile, Ed Husic, whose full name is Edem Nurdin Husic, is a descendant of Bosnian Muslim immigrants. In 2010, he became the first and only Muslim member of federal parliament, representing the city of Sydney.